put to him, as readily as I might have answered them myself. His looks and manners, his winning ways with women, his quickness and cunning did the rest. While I was still on my sick-bed, he had won Miss Blanchard's affections. While I was dreaming over the likeness in the first days of my convalescence, he had secured Mr. Blanchard's consent to the celebration of the marriage before he and his daughter left the island. Thus far, Mr. Blanchard's infirmity of sight had helped the deception. He had been content to send messages to my mother, and to receive the messages which were duly invented in return. But when the suitor was accepted, and the wedding day was appointed, he felt it due to his old friend to write to her, asking her formal consent, and inviting her to the marriage. He could only complete part of the letter himself. The rest was finished under his dictation by Miss Blanchard. There was no chance of being beforehand with the post office this time, and Ingleby, sure of his place in the heart of his victim, waylaid her as she came out of her father's room with the letter, and privately told her the truth. She was still under age, and the position was a serious one. If the letter was posted, no resource would be left but to wait and be parted forever, and to elope under circumstances which made detection almost a certainty. The destination of any ship which took them away would be known beforehand, and the fast-sailing yacht in which Mr. Blanchard had come to Madeira was waiting in the harbour to take him back to England. The only other alternative was to continue the deception by suppressing the letter, and to confess the truth when they were securely married. What arts of persuasion Ingleby used, what base advantage he might previously have taken of her love and her trust in him to degrade Miss Blanchard to his own level, I cannot say. He did degrade her. The letter never went to its destination, and with the daughter's privity and consent, the father's confidence was abused to the very last. The one precaution now left to take was to fabricate the letter from my mother which Mr. Blanchard expected, and which would arrive in due course of post before the day appointed for the marriage. Ingleby had my mother's stolen letter with him, but he was without the imitative dexterity which would have enabled him to make use of it for a forgery of her handwriting. Miss Blanchard, who had consented passively to the deception, refused to take any active share in the fraud practised on her father. In this difficulty, Ingleby found an instrument ready to his hand, in an orphan girl of barely 12 years old, a marvel of precocious ability, whom Miss Blanchard had taken a romantic fancy to befriend, and whom she had brought away with her from England to be trained as her maid. That girl's wicked dexterity removed the one serious obstacle left to the success of the fraud. I saw the imitation of my mother's writing, which she had produced under Ingleby's instructions, and, if the shameful truth must be told, with her young mistress's knowledge, and I believe I should have been deceived by it myself. I saw the girl afterwards, and my blood curdled at the sight of her. If she is alive now, woe to the people who trust her. No creature more innately deceitful and more innately pitiless ever walked this earth. The forged letter paved the way securely for the marriage, and when I reached the house they were, as the servant had truly told me, man and wife. My arrival on the scene simply precipitated the confession which they had both agreed to make. Ingleby's own lips shamelessly acknowledged the truth. He had nothing to lose by speaking out. He was married, and his wife's fortune was beyond her father's control. I pass over all that followed, my interview with the daughter and my interview with the father, to come to results. For 2 days the efforts of the wife and the efforts of the clergyman who had celebrated the marriage were successful in keeping Ingleby and myself apart. On the 3rd day I set my trap more successfully, and I and the man who had mortally injured me met together alone, face to face. Remember how my confidence had been abused. Remember how the one good purpose of my life had been thwarted. Remember the violent passions rooted deep in my nature, and never yet controlled. And then imagine for yourself what passed between us. All I need tell here is the end. He was a taller and a stronger man than I, and he took the brute's advantage with a brute's ferocity. He struck me. Think of the injuries I had received at that man's hands, and then think of his setting his mark on my face by a blow. I went to an English officer who had been my fellow passenger on the voyage from Barbados. I told him the truth, and he agreed with me that a meeting was inevitable. Duelling had its received formalities and its established laws in those days, and he began to speak of them. I stopped him. "I will take a pistol in my right hand," I said, "and he shall take a pistol in his. I will take one end of a handkerchief in my left hand, and he shall take the other end in his, and across that handkerchief the duel shall be fought." The officer got up and looked at me as if I had personally insulted him. "You are asking me to be present at a murder and a suicide," he said. "I decline to serve you." He left the room. As soon as he was gone, I wrote down the words I had said to the officer, and sent them by a messenger to Ingleby. While I was waiting for an answer, I sat down before the glass and looked at his mark on my face. Many a man has had blood on his hands and blood on his conscience, I thought, for less than this. The messenger came back with Ingleby's answer. It appointed a meeting for 3 o'clock the next day at a lonely place in the interior of the island. I had resolved what to do if he refused. His letter released me from the horror of my own resolution. I felt grateful to him, yes, absolutely grateful to him, for writing it. The next day I went to the place. He was not there. I waited 2 hours, and he never came. At last the truth dawned on me. Once a coward, always a coward, I thought. I went back to Mr. Blanchard's house. Before I got there, a sudden misgiving seized me, and I turned aside to the harbour. I was right. The harbour was the place to go to. A ship sailing for Lisbon that afternoon had offered him the opportunity of taking a passage for himself and his wife, and escaping me. His answer to my challenge had served its purpose of sending me out of the way into the interior of the island. Once more I had trusted in Fergus Ingleby, and once more those sharp wits of his had been too much for me. I asked my informant if Mr. Blanchard was aware as yet of his daughter's departure. He had discovered it, but not until the ship had sailed. This time I took a lesson in cunning from Ingleby. Instead of showing myself at Mr. Blanchard's house, I went first and looked at Mr. Blanchard's yacht. The vessel told me what the vessel's master might have concealed, the truth. I found her in the confusion of a sudden preparation for sea. All the crew were on board, with the exception of some few who had been allowed their leave on shore, and who were away in the interior of the island, nobody knew where. When I discovered that the sailing master was trying to supply their places with the best men he could pick up at a moment's notice, my resolution was instantly taken. I knew the duties on board a yacht well enough, having had a vessel of my own, and having sailed her myself. Hurrying into the town, I changed my dress for a sailor's coat and hat, and returning to the harbour, I offered myself as one of the volunteer crew. I don't know what the sailing master saw in my face. My answers to his questions satisfied him, and yet he looked at me and hesitated. But hands were scarce, and it ended in my being taken on board. An hour later Mr. Blanchard joined us, and was assisted into the cabin, suffering pitiably in mind and body both. An hour after that we were at sea, with a starless